I finally managed to tweak after like a year and a half of trying various outreach and type of prospecting methodologies for building a client base. And I mean, things were pretty good for the last year and a half. I was very fortunate. I got lucky, but nothing really worked very well. And nothing was sort of, push a button here and then X number of months later, money comes out. And there is no actual button, by the way. I just want to make that clear. It's a metaphorical button, but you see what I mean.
There's no easy button.
Yeah, there's no easy button here, but you can make it so much easier to at least get rid of the stuff that you hate when it comes to prospecting and reaching out to people. I only saw this one yesterday on LinkedIn, but I loved it as soon as I saw it, because we try to, when we think about prospecting, a lot of the time, especially if you're like me, basically I'm like a one-person business. I have people that will work with me if I have special projects that I need them for, but they're also independent. And for the most part, I work completely on my own. It's just me and the client. And you can get caught up on all these tools, right? Should I be posting on social media? Should I be advertising? Should I do Facebook ads or LinkedIn ads or Google ads? Should I do, outbound email, cold email, all these options come, right? And you end up getting confused with all the tools. And I ended up getting confused with all the tools. I mean, I'm really technical, right? I was a software developer for 15 years. I can use them all, but it's like you're too scattered. There's too much to do. I didn't like it very much. And what I found was, if you're a sort of one-person business like me, and you need to maintain expert authority, right? If you're going to get the rates that you want, you have to maintain expert authority. You can't come off as aggressive or used car salesman-y, no offense to used car salesmen or anything like that. And what I found was, the idea of marketing, which is, trying to reach casually as many people as possible, and the sales option, which is trying to talk to people and so on. I don't have the time or the resources or the people to be an expert practitioner and actually do the work for clients, and or else the time or the money to ramp up like a big campaign. So I felt like I was stuck in the middle, right? I was in a gap that I just couldn't get out of, and so eventually. And I don't know if Dr. V, you and I have never talked about this, but the reason I did the creativity, insight, and idea one in October, it was, the various methodologies is I went through that process myself to figure out, over the summer, how to deal with the fact that I was in this gap, because I couldn't get out of it. I'm a one-person business. I'm not Coca-Cola. I can't spend $10,000 a month on advertising. It's never going to happen. And so, like we said in the October one, we sort of rolled it back. Like, how can I absolutely boil down and simplify what marketing versus sales is, so that once I understand the core concept, then I can figure out where I am. Because you can't figure out where you are if you don't know, what the markers mean. And so I'm not going to read the slide, because it's number one rule. I always taught clients in the past, don't read the slide. But basically, some number of strangers need to be told you exist. This is marketing, right? Some number of strangers need to be told that you exist and what you sell or what you do. If you're like me and you're an expert, contributor kind of thing, as opposed to, selling a widget or an online course or something, right? And so there's some number of strangers you need to talk to. And the problem with the strangers is it can be very slow. All this is basically content marketing, right? This is writing a blog or posting all the time to social media. And all of those things will eventually work, or they work for enough people that you should reasonably assume that you can make them work for yourself. I don't have a blog, right? I'm a writer and I don't have a blog, right? And Dr. V gives me a harumph every so often that I don't have a blog, right? But I mean, it's just like, that's pure marketing. That's content marketing. And it's too long. It could take years. Eventually, if you become famous enough, if you're lucky and you build a big enough audience, like you basically develop, or you sort of walk backwards into a referral type of business where enough people know you that you get referred.
Right.
But it could take a really long time. And for a lot of people, it's never going to happen. And then selling, very similar. I think the last two sentences are the exact same, except in selling, you're trying to tell the right people that you exist and what you sell, which sounds like the way to go, but it's problematic in that, how do you find the right people? And how do you find them at exactly the right time in their buying cycle, so that you haven't wasted your time and your willpower cold calling a whole bunch of people and trying to, get on their radar and so on. And so like it was very frustrating, right? To be in this gap. I felt like I was stuck and there was nothing I could do. I could do many things and they all worked to some degree, but they didn't work very well. Right. So then, and this goes back to the creativity and the insights and, the exercises that we talked about in that thing about, trying to figure out your way out of a problem is that, I could have tried to bridge the gap, but it just wasn't working. And I could try to climb out of the gap. But honestly, if I'd had the resources and time, I guess time's a resource, but if I had the people and money and time, in my own company to climb out of the gap, I wouldn't be in the gap in the first place. I'd be solidly on either the marketing side or the sales side, and prospecting that way.
I keep thinking fall into the gap.
So. Well, let's turn it upside down. Why not pull people into the gap with us?
Huh.
Right? Yeah. Metaphorically, obviously. But What if instead of trying to get out or bridge it, what would we do to pull people in? Not build an audience online or anything. Pull people into the gap with us, because if you're in a individual contributor, expert advisor, niche kind of like professional services business, basically you just need a conversation with somebody and it'll either work or it won't. And they'll recognize what you do and that you're valuable, or they won't, or you're not for them. Some of them you're just not for them. But what if we pull people down into the gap with us instead of us trying to climb out of it? Or to put it another way, you can't dig your way out of a hole. That's not how holes work.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? All right. So, there are about 100 people registered for this, and virtually all of them are some kind of fractional executive, right? A fractional CMO, CFO, COO, CTO. I didn't send this. This is like, for a live event, this is a big audience, but I didn't send it to my mailing list.
Right.
I didn't invite people through like the LinkedIn, go spam everyone in the world who happens to be a first love guy. I didn't do it. I didn't like have any of my, friends or partners, you guys, or you, Dr. I didn't have anyone sort of promoted on my behalf. If they wanted to, that's great. But I didn't ask anyone to do it. I wanted a fractional executive audience for this because I think it works really, really well. Just like I'm a fractional senior copywriter, right? And I had a problem. I didn't. Here's the thing. I write ads. I write homepages. I write like email campaigns. Like I can probably more than many other people who might be watching this. I have not just the means but the experience to do the various types of prospecting. But like none of them worked really well for me. Right. By the way, in case you didn't, I'm a wide audience copywriter. I don't write other people's blogs. A lot of the people in this watching this now or watching it in a replay, they're fractional chief marketing officers. So they've worked with copywriters before, but 95 or 99 out of every 100 copywriters they've ever talked to are content marketing copywriters. Like they write blog posts, they might write articles, they write use cases and white papers, like very narrow audience type stuff. And I don't do any of that work, only by very special request as a special favor once in a while to existing clients. And I don't like promote it. And, I don't, there are lots of people in the world to do that. You don't need Dean Way to do that kind of stuff. I do the wide audience stuff, right? Everything where like the whole world could potentially see it and they have no idea who you are. So an outbound email campaign, the homepage on your website, the about section on your LinkedIn profile page, the banner, and all the stuff at your booth in a convention, where like strangers, thousands of strangers, and we need to grab their attention like, immediately. That's the stuff I write.
That's way more creative.
There you go. That's the name of the company, right? And so there are, like I said before, there are lots of other things to do. And I want to talk about the third one in just a second. But I don't blog, but I have written a couple of articles. Nothing really ever came of them, right? Social media posts, nothing ever really came of it. The cold calling, I never did. Like, I'm just not built to get on the phone and start calling a bunch of strangers, even if I think they might be very likely clients. It's just not me, right?
No
cold emailing, I absolutely did cold emailing. And my most famous and well-known customers, some of them came from cold emails, like straight up cold emails. And I mean cold emails. I don't mean like I researched them and then wrote them an email where I mentioned something about them. No, other than like their name coming after the word hi, there was no personalization at all. And I still managed to get some number of clients through that. I got some through networking. Basically, no one I ever met in a networking group ever hired me, but they referred people who ended up hiring me. And we did webinars for a while. That worked, okay, not bad. The outsourced lead gen, I've never tried outsourced lead gen. And I think some of the people in the audience, fractional CMOs, are also in the outsourced lead gen business. And I mean, that must be a brutally competitive business, right?
Yeah.
Because nobody in anywhere on LinkedIn who has the word marketing anywhere in their LinkedIn page has not been approached by a lead gen company, just like spammed on LinkedIn by a lead gen company. Right? It's endemic. It's everywhere. And so a brutally competitive business. The only reason I didn't use, I guess there could have been a money situation, but I don't even know how much they cost. I mean, straight up, I've never I've never gotten far enough in a conversation with anyone in the outsourced lead generation business to figure out what it costs, because they couldn't get over. We've talked before on previous events. One of the first questions you need to be able to answer to any prospect if they ask it, or you need to answer it even if they don't, is why are you the safer choice of the people or the companies I'm looking at? And the problem with being, and we'll talk about this in a minute, the problem with outsourced lead gen companies is that you give away control over how you're represented. Right. And just like I said, you can't come off as aggressive in your prospecting. You can't have sort of a stereotypical used car salesman kind of thing. And then once someone becomes a client, flip over and be this highly paid, trusted advisor, expert in your field. To them, the first impression they have of you is kind of a huckster. And you'll never get past that with that client. That's just human nature. And so for me, I'm sure outsourced lead gen, obviously it's a big industry, so it works for some customers or lots of customers. But for me, if you're like an individual, like high-end contributor to some project or something, it wouldn't make sense. Probably someone in the comments is gonna say yes it will, or and that's fine. But
Nobody
so
yet.
be it, right? So, and then what I found, whether it was cold email or networking or articles and all this stuff, is I had all of these problems. I couldn't get past them. Number one was procrastination, right? Finding the people or even the companies to reach out to individually. Right? I would, on any given day, there was always something either more urgent or more interesting to do than slog through, online job posts or LinkedIn or any other place where someone who might be hiring an expert like you would post about hiring an expert like you. And so, I mean, I'd have good intentions on Sunday and it'd be on my calendar. And then by Tuesday, it's like, oh, well, yeah, but I got to do this other thing. And so it was very hard to overcome the procrastination. And then you also have, like I just said, with the outsourced lead gen or the other stuff, is the reputation risk, right? You can't be closer to the aggressive side of outreach and tone and voice. And then once you've signed the contract or secured the customer, flip over and suddenly be the sort of, a revered, trusted advisor. It doesn't work. Also, it's very time consuming. All prospecting, no matter what you do, is time consuming. And the less time consuming it is for all the other methods I tried, the wider the audience needed to be to have to move the needle on my revenue. Right? Whatever that noise is, it's weird.
Sorry.
And then, of course, the nature of prospecting is that I don't mean low volume as in like you're not talking to very many people. On sales side, you're not talking to very many people because you're trying to talk to people, right, individually. And on the marketing side, if you're going that route, any given person you contact has a very, very low chance of ever being a client. That's why you need to talk to some unknown high number of strangers. And then I didn't want something that could, you can look at cost in a couple of ways, right? As far as like if it's going to get you new business. For me, I didn't want, and this is how cheap I am, right? I didn't want anything in my system that would cost me more than one lower to mid-level client per year would cost. That's pretty low, right? You could argue theoretically that if I spent $1 million and I made, $1.25 million, it's absolutely worth it. And I guess technically it is. But, once you start like getting below that, it's like, oh, this is like not good. Like, so I wanted to optimize the bejesus out of this thing, right? Cost wise, and still answer all of these other issues, right? So what did I want, right? I needed something that was going to if you've ever been in sales, you know what the term call reluctance is, right? It's like someone knows they need to pick up the phone, they need to dial it. And it's like, oh man, I don't want to do this. Like, I don't want to bother people. I don't want to, whatever. Right. I needed to overcome my own procrastination. It absolutely needed to preserve my expert authority and expert status, because that's where all the margin in my business is. I am, and I'm perfectly fine saying this, I'm one of the best wide audience copywriters anywhere. Right. I've got clients on 6 continents, like I say over and over. By the way, if anyone in the audience knows anyone in Antarctica, I'm still looking for a client in Antarctica so I can finish my continental set. Not a lot of sales and marketing seems to be happening in Antarctica. No
Not too many
conventions are being
penguins.
held down there. But, if there's any way to do it, I would love to pick up a client in Antarctica.
Somebody at a research station down there probably wants to be an entrepreneur.
And it needed to connect me with a lot of people in my general target group, right? And not hundreds. I'm talking thousands, right? I am not an everyday service. Most copywriters, they'll sign on for 6 months of blog posts, or 12 months of blog posts, or 10 blog articles, and they'll just write them for you within a week or two. But then after that, how you post them is up to you, whatever your schedule is. But not me. I'm normally, first of all, I'm almost never the first copywriter anyone hires. But secondly, I'm brought in to do very specific things for wide audience stuff. That's not a recurring thing. People don't change their homepages or their LinkedIn about sections, or their landing pages and stuff, or sales pages. They don't change them a lot. So I might only work for someone for a few weeks, and then I might not work with them again for months or a year. There's only one exception to that, and I'll get into that in a second. So if I'm not a recurring kind of service, then by all means, I need to talk to thousands of people. A lot of people need to know I exist. Now, by the way, if you're a fractional CMO or a graphic designer or a copywriter like me and some other types of experts, you have an additional burden here, in that the way that you market yourself is taken by prospects as an indication of the kind of job or quality of job you would do for them too. So if your slides, if your homepage, if your whatever look like crap and are disorganized, and you don't have, like an integrated message, you're not saying the same thing on LinkedIn as you are on your homepage, as you are on whatever, then they think, okay, they can't do this for themselves. Somewhere subconsciously, they can't do a good job marketing themselves. What kind of job could they possibly do marketing me and my company? Right. So we have an extra burden. And like I say on the slide, it's not fair, but still true. So threading together sort of multiple needles at once, call reluctance, procrastination, needing to talk to a lot of people, needing to maintain expert authority, and all of these other crazy things that were driving me crazy. I finally pieced together this process. And I'll say right off the bat, there's nothing secret or unique about this process. I bet if I read enough prospecting books, and I read a lot of prospecting books, or if I watched enough webinars about prospecting, I would come across the exact same thing. So it's not that the process is unique. What I want to talk about is some of the challenges in implementing it, and some tips and lessons learned that I had as I went through it, so that you don't have to take as long to dial this in as I had to.
Cool.
Okay. And so before we start anything else, sort of the spectrum for tone is here, right? On the far right, you don't want to be ever in the aggressive mode. It turns people off immediately. They'll never want to talk to you again. And I'm just not someone who does well in the aggressive mode anyway, so it never worked for me. Selling from your heels is the opposite end of that. It's where you almost feel like someone's trying to create more space between you and them, even though technically they're trying to persuade you of something, but you're never persuaded by someone as they continue to move away from you. Right. So if they keep saying this would be great for you, that kind of stuff, but it seems like they're so afraid of rejection, or so unsure of the value of what they're selling or who they are or what they do, that you can't, it's almost like they're slippery. It's you can't trying to keep away from me while I'm trying to grasp onto something you're saying and see if it's right for me. And then a lot of the stuff around neutral or nuanced or objective, that's where most people live. For everything that they say, they're trying, if I ever go to a LinkedIn page and someone's about section talks about them in the third party, that's the ultimate example of neutral or objective, right? They're pretending someone else wrote it. That's how arm's length and balanced they want to appear. But everyone needs to live in assertive. It's the smallest section, but you need to live in assertive. You need to be able to say, I do this, or I deliver this, or I solve this problem. And if you're not willing to, put a flag in the ground and stand next to it and say, this is my flag, this is what I do, this is a problem I solve. If you have this problem, we should talk. If you're not willing to do that, then no prospecting system on earth is ever going to work for you. Right. So just be ready. If it's true about you, Stand on it. Don't be afraid of it. So I get lots of this, right? I do lots of outreach on LinkedIn, and I get lots and lots and lots of nice replies.
Cool.
Maybe I counted it up. It takes a while because LinkedIn messaging it's junk, right? I mean, it's crap, right? I mean, it'll even like say that you have an unread message and you read it 2 years ago.
Yeah.
And like that happened to me this morning, actually. A bunch of people before Thanksgiving. I went and cleared out all of my unread and LinkedIn messages yesterday. And then there was like a whole bunch more today that I know should have been seen as unread yesterday when I was going through it. But instead, like, what the hell? What are all these things? Right. But anyway, by my best estimate, I have gotten 4. Hey, this is not really for me. No need to contact me about this again. 4 out of 1,500.
You got good targeting.
So I have good targeting. We'll get to that in a second too, right? And I mean, I'm doing really well so far. I mean, don't have like the largest, LinkedIn network around for sure, right? But all of this stuff, all this fractional stuff, you can see the fractional search. These were all done yesterday, by the way. Is almost 900 people, and 638 of those are fractional CMOs. And I mean, you and I actually had a conversation in Q1 where I had 5,000. I'd been on LinkedIn for like a long time. I'm one of the first people to ever join LinkedIn. That's literally true. I joined in like the 3rd month they ever existed. Wow. And but I mean, it took me a really long time. I wasn't systematic about it. And I didn't try to, but all of these people, I hit 5,000. It was a big deal to hit 5,000 in Q1 of this year. And now I'm looking at it about an hour ago. I am just about to break 6,800.
Cool.
So all of those extra people are in target groups. Most of them, of course, are some sort of fractional executive, but there's a couple other target groups as well. And so it's working well, Yeah. And just so we're clear, never do this. These all came from yesterday. Just spam pitch.
Ugh.
Now I do something that maybe a lot of people who are listening or watching this don't do. I accept all inbound connection requests. All. I don't look at who you are or what you do or where in the world you are. Right. I think I've only like skipped like 2 or 3, and they were obviously these sort of like fake, an amazingly pretty girl is a senior VP of something at IBM and she's 18 years old kind of thing. Fortunately, I virtually never get any of those anyway, but those are the only ones I ever turn down. Like, I was just like instantly sus kind of stuff, right? But I mean, I get this stuff all the time. And I bet everyone who watches this too. Never do this. Like, never, ever do this.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's figure out sort of like the initial or kind of meta process for the whole thing. And then we'll go through those steps, like I just said. So basically you have to figure out your angle. I'm going to show you in a second something around that. And then like your angle, like why you're different, not why you're unique. I mean, I'm a copywriter. Like you can hand me a rock you pick up off the ground and I can write up why it's unique. Right. It's like unique doesn't mean anything, and new, virtually nobody's new. Right. Like the example we use is for every Uber, there's 10,000 companies that say we're the Uber of whatever. Right. We're the Uber of laundry service delivery for prisons in the greater Boston area. Like whatever. Who cares? Right? Don't try to be new. You're not new. You're almost certainly not new. But an angle or why you're different, that's something that someone like me can figure out. And sort of like work up for you, right? So like, and then you talk to people about them. This is the other thing. Like we have like a thimble full of attention for strangers, talking about themselves, and we have an ocean full of attention for strangers who talk to us about us. We love it when people talk to us about us, and yet every client wants to start off by like, here's how I want to fill the thimble, and it's like, no, like don't fight it. Let's talk to them about them, and we'll put you in their story instead of trying to get them interested in your story. Like, why would we go against their natural inclination to listen to something about themselves? Right. And then, of course, you try to pull them into the gap with you. So, and then here's my theory. And I had a great conversation with someone that I connected with 2 weeks ago. So the week before Thanksgiving. And he's at year 4 and I'm at year 2. in being out on my own. I've been a copywriter for a super long time. I did enterprise sales for companies you've heard of, right? And marketing, and and did speech writing for professional speakers and politicians. No politicians anymore. I like to sleep at night, but people, right? And write and for sales enablement, like write what salespeople say in the room, in an elevator, in a 8-person conference room, whatever, right? And so like he talked about how he's basically at a referral business now. Like his business is a referral business. He virtually does no networking, no outreach, and whatever. And I told him that I was just now getting to the point where I can see my referral-based revenue growing month on month, but it's still like a relatively small slice. And he says, yeah, at around year 2, if you're doing your prospecting like consistently, you'll like start to see that. By year 3, it's about half your business, and by year 4, you're sort of there. And so my whole strategy right now, because I assumed that this was what I should do, and then he sort of reinforced it for me a little bit, is that I need to talk to some unknown number of strangers. I don't know how many strangers you need to tell that you exist and what you do, and I don't know how many strangers I need to tell. But I know, like I said in the earlier slide, it's not hundreds or dozens; it's thousands of people. Of like roughly the right people. I don't know if they're exactly the right people, but roughly the right people. I don't know how many thousands I need to talk to. Maybe it's 4,000. Maybe it's 2,000. Maybe it's 10,000. I don't know. But at some point, an inflection will occur, and my referral business will start growing faster even than it is now. That's the goal here, right? Is to not have to do much prospecting at all. But first, you gotta roll the boulder up the hill before you can rest and enjoy the fact that you've got a boulder on top of a hill. So here's how my process looks. And I'm going to walk through all of these pretty quickly, but as comprehensively as I think you might need. Because like I said, it's not a secret process. Loads of people do something like this. So first, there's housekeeping. Housekeeping basically comes down to making sure that as a client does a little bit of looking at you, or even you could call it even a tiny bit of research about you, you're saying the same thing to the same type of people everywhere. So what you say in your about section agrees with what's on your like homepage of your website, or in any other place that you sort of hang out or live online, right? So it's got a consistent message. You're doing some cleanup. You're like optimizing and organizing some stuff, and then a LinkedIn invitation goes out to people. We'll talk about that in a second. And then I've been testing whether the give away something. In my case, giving away something means booklets, like PDF versions of booklets that I've written. Some of the people who are watching this right now and received one or more. Some people received one PDF booklet from me. Some received 2. Some received none. And so it's optional. I'm testing. There doesn't seem to be. It's definitely better to give something away than not give something away. But again, a lot comes down to basically what the cover and the title look like on the booklet. It makes a big difference. Right? Titles and covers make a lot of difference in your LinkedIn name too. We'll get to that in a second. So then the whole point is to get to the point where I can invite them to something, like an event like this. And then there's a live event, and which is basically just slides, right? It's just slides. Everyone's done it. Everyone watching this has done a slide presentation to an audience. And then some percent. So if you look at it, some percentage of everyone who gets a LinkedIn invitation, in my case, it's roughly 34.4%. How's that for roughly, right? Roughly 34.4% of everyone that I invite will accept the invitation to connect. And then they'll get 1 or 2 of these PDF booklet gifts that talk about a problem that people like them face. Or they might get
34% plus is amazing, actually.
Yeah, and one of the ways I do that is by keeping it super simple.
Yeah.
So we'll talk about that in a second, right? And then the whole point is to send them to invite them to something. And what you're inviting them to is the live event. And the live event, we'll talk about it in a second. X number of people. So of all the people who are, let's say 1,000 people, or let's talk about like this one and how we get to here, right? In fact, let's go here. If you're watching this right now and you're live, and I'm not trying to be meta, but literally you as an individual, you are right here in my process. You've been through my process on the top. You got 1 or 2 gift booklet PDFs or none. You got an invitation to this, most likely. Some people are in here from like a LinkedIn post or someone shared something, but the vast, vast majority have come through this process and they're right here right now. So so we have about 100 people registered for this. Now, people register. I'll talk about the registration process in a second, but of the 1,000, I don't know how many thousands of people were in, but I only sent invitations to, I think, 500 and something people, and 100 people. So roughly like 1 out of 5
Right.
register for the live event. And then of this live event, some percentage of those people, based on the experience we had in September and the experience we had in October doing the other live events. By the way, it's up to you going forward. I don't mention this in another slide, so I'll mention it now. If you want to do your presentation, like the same one every month, I mean, I'm totally cool with that. Like, do whatever you want. I do one that's completely different from all the others every month, so that anyone who comes in can go on my website and watch the videos for the previous ones and download the free booklets and whatever it is and workshop stuff I'm giving them. But I do a completely different one on a completely different topic every month. So some percentage of the people who watch the live event or watch the video, go to Calendly and get on my calendar, and a percentage of them become clients. And most of that will happen in the next 10 days.
Right.
And then it's rinse and repeat. The invitation process never stops. The giving away the gifts never stops. And once a month, towards the end of the month, there's always a big event. So I always have something to invite like current LinkedIn connections to and new LinkedIn connections.
It's great. Very systematized.
Very systematized, and it gets rid of, well, I'll talk about it in a second, how it gets rid of all the call reluctance and procrastination and stuff that was holding me back, right? But I will say, like, as for the live events, right? Telling them how an expert solves a big problem that they're going to experience or are experiencing, like, it beats everything else 11 times out of 10. You're not doing this to talk about you. You're doing this to talk about them and how they can solve a problem that they have. This whole presentation right now, like, other than those like 2 slides that went by really fast about talking about what I do, like me, Dean Way, the copywriter and like, prospecting guy, that's it until we get to the very end. And there's another slide. I'll point it out when we get there. I mean, you'll know it, but I'll point out why it's there and where it is and the place it's in. Other than that, this whole thing is about showing people how to fix a problem that they have. And if you're a fractional executive, a fractional CMO or CFO or whatever, like, you almost certainly have the same problem that I have, which is how to tell enough people that you exist and that you solve this particular kind of problem in a way so that you're not just sort of spamming people or you're turning them off or they think you're not worth the price you want to charge because you've got sort of a huckstery approach, right?
It's like 110% too. So.
Yeah. So let's talk about the housekeeping step first. The housekeeping is basically making sure that the pieces are in place before you start inviting people, because otherwise they're going to see your old LinkedIn profile or they're going to see a website that you're ashamed of. By the way, everyone's ashamed of their website. Like, every single person I've ever talked to will preface. I'll say, like, what's your website URL? And they'll say, all right, I'll give it to you, but before I do, like, I know it's not very good, or we're in the process of upgrading it, or like it's almost a truism that everyone hates their own website, right?
Yeah.
So I get that. So there's a few ways to do the outreach mechanism. Like, where are we on this? Okay. So there's a few ways to do the outreach mechanism. You can have a teenager or a virtual assistant, like, find people on LinkedIn, as a big group, and then just send out a simple, very simple connection request message. That's it. I mean, don't take the default one that LinkedIn gives you, but just like a one-liner that goes out, right? I am not officially recommending that you go this route, but I will tell you that there must be millions and millions of people on LinkedIn who have gone this route. And so it's working for somebody. And that is, you can subscribe to a service like Lusha or Alfred or Dripify or Phantom Buster or Duck Soup, right? Where a lot of this initial part of, finding the selection, the search function of finding a set of people that probably fit your profile that you want to connect with, and then automatically reaching out to them. Like, there are lots of companies that do that. We'll talk about that a little bit further on. I might actually cut this whole section because, of course, LinkedIn doesn't like this. And yet, these companies have existed for a really, really long time, and they do have millions and millions of customers.
Yep.
So it's working for some. There's some anecdotal evidence from my own experience and from helping clients of this kind of stuff and what matters and what doesn't. Your LinkedIn about section and name, we're going to go into that in a second. Your website homepage, and then sort of a little booklet. So don't buy anything from this site. But last year, I did 200 plus about sections on people's LinkedIn profiles. Not the whole page, just the about section.
Yeah.
The thing about your LinkedIn profile page, and some of your prospects are going to sort of wander over to there. They're going to click on your little circular head profile pic in LinkedIn messaging, because all of the outbound is done through LinkedIn messaging. They see it as a LinkedIn message, right? They're gonna look at you, and they're gonna the about section is the only part of the page that's written for someone else, right? The rest of your page is basically you talking about yourself in chronological order. The about section is, or it should be, you sending a message, a personalized message, or as personal feeling as you can to a stranger. It's very hard. Most of us have no or very little experience writing to strangers. And so a lot of people don't even have an about section, but you absolutely have to have an about section on your LinkedIn profile. And it should talk to the reader, who's the stranger who's looking at that page. So if you want advice on how to do that and lessons learned from the 200 and something plus about sections that I've written for other people and businesses on LinkedIn, company pages and entrepreneurs and individual practitioners and solopreneurs, you can go to perfectlydescribed.com. And if you scroll down just above the picture of this handsome gentleman right here, is a 12-minute YouTube video that goes through the 8 questions that I ask everyone, and like why I ask it and how to answer it and examples of it. And then on the page itself, if you scroll down, you can see examples for everything from film editors to jury consultants to city planners. I mean, the lessons are durable and sort of like principle. They're not specific to any individual kind of business or whatever. But if you go to perfectlydescribed.com, you can get the video, you can get the workbook, the little worksheet that I walk people through and how we fill it in. And then you can even look at examples of how it's done. I'm not telling you to buy anything on the site. In fact, don't buy anything on this site. All right. The next thing that's most important, and honestly, this is where I would average 17 to 19% of all the people that I sent invitations to on LinkedIn agreeing to connect until I figured this out. And then once I did, it doubled to like 34, 35% and has been rock solid at 34, 35% ever since.
Cool.
And it's just this. In the first name, you go to your profile, and in the box for your first name, you put in your first and last name. And then in the box for your last name, you put in something. You're either going to put in something that shows an affinity for the group that you're targeting. And by the way, feel free to change this throughout the year as you target different groups, right? But since I mostly target and pretty much only target at this point fractional executives and fractional CMOs in particular, then that's why, I'm a fractional executive and this is what I do. So you either want to show affinity or you want to show adjacency, one or the other. And affinity is, and I hate using this word, but affinity is this person and me, like we're in the same tribe.
Yeah.
Adjacency is this person would be an expert or knows about something, right? If somebody was, a diabetes expert or diabetes specialist, I wouldn't expect them to necessarily also have diabetes.
Right. Yeah, that's true.
So that's adjacency. Whereas if it was someone who had diabetes and they talked to people about diabetes, that's affinity.
Well, so if you say like affinity, adjacency, like community versus competence, or is that not right?
Relevant competence, like
relevant competence,
right?
Yeah.
I don't care if they're a plumber, I'm probably not going to be interested in saying.
Right.
But if I am a plumber and they're an expert in plumbing supplies and best deals, that's adjacency, and that would be someone that I'm interested in.
There you go.
And then ideally, you would also evoke some curiosity. I mean, I get a lot of people who just reply back and said, you know what? I've never heard of a fractional copywriter, but it totally makes sense, especially for the kind of copywriting I do, which is like not content marketing, blog writing type stuff.
Right.
So yeah, use the second, and I always put it in parentheses. The reason you do it this way, by the way, is that both the connection request and every message in LinkedIn Messenger from now till the end of time where you have this set up will show all of this.
Hmm.
A lot of people make a judgment on whether they're going to connect to someone they've never heard of based on just what your name looks like. And so if you can commandeer part of your namespace to show affinity or adjacency or evoke curiosity, or like I said, that's what jumped me from 17, 18% to 34, 35%.
That's great.
No other change. I run a lot of experiments. No other
Yeah.
change has ever had as big an impact on the number of people who are willing to accept an inbound connection than me making this change right here.
Excellent.
It's always the stupid little things that work the best, right?
Yeah, very often.
Things turn on a dime.
Sure.
All right. So talking about sort of, if you go down the route of, booklets, but also for your homepage and your LinkedIn About section and literally everything, right? These are the 3 levels of messaging. And nearly everything that you write is down in the informational, whether it's your homepage or, like I said, your About section. It's all informational. You're always talking about you, right? This is who I am and what I do, right?
Right.
But you need to move up, especially if you're in sort of a B2B market. You need to move up so that at least a quarter, and I know if I tell someone 25%, like, some people are going to like look at, okay, it's only about 20%. I need to add more, but about a quarter, ideally 3/4. Ideally 100% if you can do this kind of writing. I do this kind of writing, but you don't need to do this, my kind of writing, to do this well, is aspirational. So all that's happened is we flipped to the other person, right? We flipped to the other side of the screen. You could be better. Your company could be better.
Mm-hmm.
There's a negative. If you think about it this way, there's a negative present, right? If the present wasn't negative, then there's no problem to solve and nobody needs you in the first place. There's a negative present. There's a positive future where either the negative present or what makes it negative either has been resolved or no longer exists. It's been taken away. Something's been added to fix it, or it's been taken away altogether, right? You could be better. That's a positive future. And you want to talk to them about their positive future. This goes back to people will listen to you talk to them about them. They don't want to talk. They don't want to listen to you talk about you.
Mm-hmm.
And so if you're just you talking about you, you're down at the informational level. You have to provide information, right? They need to know, like, how do they engage with you? What's the, depending on your specialty, there's all kinds of stuff, right? A lot of fractional CMOs, they specialize in new product launches or turnarounds or brand enhancement. There's anything you can think of. There's some fractional CMO who has specialized in their corporate career doing that. And so now that's what they do for clients, right? So you can slice and dice it a lot of ways, but it should be about the readers, the prospects, positive future, and stop talking about who you are and what you do and not talking about them. Some people who are watching this can go to transformational. Transformational does tend to live mostly in B2C, and it's very specific. I almost never, because almost all my clients are B2B, I rarely get to write transformational. I've only done it a few times in the last couple of years. I'm doing one right now, and it's for a wealth management company out on the West Coast. Right. That is transformational. Like, you could be a kind of a new person, right? You're not the person who like deals with this anymore. You're a new person who has this. But generally, other than like wealth, you're talking about diet, exercise, fitness, beauty, that kind of stuff. You could be a new person. You almost never get to say to someone, you could be a new company. Nobody wants to be a new company, right? They want to be aspirational. They want to be a better version of the company they are. You can't say, yeah, we're going to rip this company down to the studs and rebuild. It's like that. No one's going to sign up for that, man.
Nobody wants a makeover.
Right. And no one's going to trust an outsider to do that. That person could get hit by a bus mid-project. It's like, well, what do we do now? Right. So no. But informational, aspirational, and transformational, you want to, as much as you can, live at the aspirational level if you're a business talking to other businesses. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about the invitation a little bit more, and we got to talk about LinkedIn jail. By the way, like, in case anyone didn't read or didn't see that one of the emails that went out, the reason we're not doing this on LinkedIn itself, we've done 100+ LinkedIn live streams on the LinkedIn platform this year alone. And the reason that we're not doing it on LinkedIn is because on LinkedIn, you're not allowed to talk about LinkedIn.
Right.
It's like a very Fight Clubby kind of rule. So we're doing this on YouTube because for the first time in 100+ events, we can't do it on LinkedIn. Not technically. I'm sure no one's going to We're not going to end up in LinkedIn jail ourselves, but that's how it
No.
works. So anyway, you can either do all this manually, you can do it yourself, or you can use an automated system. Millions of people use an automated system. For the most part, the automated systems are going to cost roughly $50 a month, assuming you don't sign up for a whole quarter or sign up for a whole year. I can't, like I said, officially advise you to use an automated system. I will tell you that, like any other service you might ever use, especially if you've never used it before, you should only do month to month, because you might, not like the way that company operates or does something. And so you don't want to be locked into like a long-term contract. You just want to be able to flip to a competitor again on a month to month and like try them out instead. But you can have, my invitations are super, super short. It basically just says like, hi. I don't even put in their name. It's just like, hi. Something along the lines of, looks like we have a lot of similar connections. I figured, I would say hi.
Mm-hmm.
That's it. It's the whole thing. That's it. Like literally, I don't even put their name in it. Like there's nothing. It's just that. So if you are going to use, by the way, one of these services, don't use the text that they come up with.
Right.
I mean, that text has been, A/B tested and stuff, and I'm sure it performs very well. The problem is it's the same one that most other people are sending out. Remember when every invitation you got says, I'd like to add you to my professional network on LinkedIn or whatever they're stock phrasing, right? And like everyone knew, like you just click the button. So like change it at least a little bit, all right? Like you can do the minimum amount. We'll talk about formulas and stuff later. Now, in case you're not familiar with the term LinkedIn jail, you can end up in LinkedIn jail whether you use I've ended up in LinkedIn jail twice, and both times it was just me. Like there was no software or anything like within 100 miles of what I was doing. It's just that the pattern of behavior that I had that day seemed to be a little different to LinkedIn's algorithm. So I ended up in LinkedIn jail. LinkedIn jail is a suspension of activity.
Right. And
it has two levels. Either you can still log into your account and see stuff, but you can't invite people. Maybe you can't post. It usually lasts like 24 to 72 hours.
Yeah.
And then there's a more severe level of LinkedIn jail where you can't even log in.
Yes.
For a few days. Right? LinkedIn jail is not LinkedIn banning. Right? Your account still exists. If you wait long enough and sit on your hands, you will eventually be able to get back into your account. Although you're probably like being watched for a while.
Yeah, and your hands do get warm as you're sitting on them for that period of time.
So we talked earlier about some anecdotal evidence. So I can tell you that, and I know, at this point, I know a lot of people on LinkedIn, and I talk to a lot of people every week on LinkedIn. People who pay LinkedIn for any kind of paid account, even the cheapest paid account, seem to be far, far less likely to ever end up in LinkedIn jail, no matter what they do on LinkedIn or how much they use it or how many invitations they send or whatever, compared to the people who have a free account.
Yes, because
so if you're going to use if you're going to use a dedicated, Dr. V knows because he was in LinkedIn jail earlier this year.
Yeah, I eventually got paroled.
Yeah, he got paroled and now he has a regular, but he had a free account.
Yeah.
And someone else had a paid account who, was sort of, following the same process. By the way, it's not my process. Like Dr. V doesn't follow this process that I'm showing you guys. He is
but I need to. That's the thing.
Yeah. But the other person doing the exact same thing, no problem whatsoever. That person was paying LinkedIn for something. Mm-hmm. So I don't have any inside information about how LinkedIn makes these decisions. I can just tell you that it virtually, unless you spam a bunch of people, if you have a paid account and you've had a paid account for at least a little while, if you're going to start my process, you should go get whatever the cheapest LinkedIn account is right now. I'm not talking $100 a month for Sales Navigator. I mean, just find the $29 or whatever it is a month job seeker one. It doesn't matter what it is. It just has to be a premium account, even the lowest one, right? And let that sort of, and just continue to use LinkedIn as regular, but just sort of let that age a bit for a month or two, and then you can start this process, and it makes a big difference. There's a way to do this without letting it age for a month or two, but I'm not going to go into that here. I do that for clients. I don't give that away.
Yeah. By the way, do you want to answer questions at the end, or do you want to take one?
Yeah, if you don't mind, I'll take care of it at the end.
There we go.
Because, well, first of all, some people, they know this is going to last 45 minutes or so, and they expect to leave. And then other people have seen me on other events, and they know that I can literally talk until I run out of air about all this stuff So let's let that
Okay,
happen at the end,
we'll
right?
leave that to
All
you.
right. The next thing is the search phrase. And we talked about keeping, I'll get back to the search page in a second. We talked about keeping it short and simple. I just told you basically what I send, right? We
Yeah.
seem to have a lot of similar connections or mutual connections, blah, blah, blah. And now
Mhm.
I want to talk about the number of mutual connections, because other than that graphic I showed you with the first name and the last name box, the most important thing, and I've run so many crazy experiments, right? Like I ran an experiment once to see if people were more likely to accept a connection if we both had the same last name and if we both had the same first name. Obviously, we didn't have the exact same first and last name. You want to know how stupid that was? The having the same first name as someone pulled twice as better as having the same last name. I'm still connected to someone called
Really?
Victoria Way in Australia. I have no idea who she is. I'm sure she only accepted because we have the same last name, spelled the
Yeah.
exact same way.
Yeah.
But if you have the same first name as someone, it works really well. If you have
Wow.
a common name like John or something, like go for it. Like, invite
Yeah.
every John you can think of. What do I care,
Every
right?
John. That
But
sounds
anyway,
a little risque to invite every John. So
this is another reason why we're on YouTube today and not LinkedIn for this live sessions. I'm
right.
going to talk to you something, tell you something about LinkedIn. That LinkedIn, like, um, the other than like how we format your name and the sort of like little tiny title or job title or affinity, adjacency, curiosity thing we talked about, the number of mutual connections you have with someone that you're reaching out to is probably it is the next most important factor.
Mhm.
If I have zero mutual connections with someone, it seems to be a much lower likelihood that they're going to like say okay. Whereas if I have like 85 mutual connections with them, it's basically a no-brainer. So, well, 85,
Right.
like let's go, right? So I'm going to tell you now how to increase the number of mutual connections you have with virtually everybody on LinkedIn in like a few weeks. And it's this: go to LinkedIn in advance of this process. Go to LinkedIn, do a search for in quotes talent acquisition, 2 words, right? So a lot of you already know this, but talent acquisition is sort of the newer name for recruiting. Recruiters on LinkedIn accept all invitations or virtually all invitations sight unseen. Like they don't even look at your profile. They don't care.
Mhm.
They want the largest possible network because on LinkedIn, I mean, some of them have like the recruiter package on LinkedIn that lets them reach out to a certain number of people per month, even if they have no connection with them, like a third level connection.
Right.
But on LinkedIn, you can send a connection request to anyone that you have a second connection, second level connection to, right? And
Mhm.
so by connecting to recruiters, you automatically are a second level connection to all 25, 30,000 people that is in their network, right? Supposedly your network taps out at LinkedIn at around 30,000.
Mhm.
That number's from years ago. I don't know if it's been increased, but anyway,
It might be
recruiters by
switching, yeah.
definition have thousands and tens of thousands of connections, and so and they'll accept virtually all inbound connections without like, you don't need to go look at them and see what school they went to and say, hey, I noticed that you went to this school, like go blue kind of thing, right? Like no, you can just like do the search. They'll like show up 20 per page. And you just go connect, 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 connect. Now, according to LinkedIn, you can only do, especially if you're still on a free account, you can only do 100 LinkedIn invitations per week, rather.
Right.
So in a given week, there's like 4.3 weeks. So you can do approximately 433
Right.
outbound connections per month, right?
Yeah.
So you just go in and you do that. Like you don't have to look at them. You don't care. All you want to do is start connecting to all of them because within a month, the number of people that you now have a second level connection to grows by like more than 1 million people. That's a big deal.
Yeah.
Right. And then if you have enough recruiters, then you have a second level network of tens of millions or hundreds of millions of people.
Mhm.
And so even having a single mutual connection with somebody makes them far more likely to accept a connection request than not having any mutual connections. And the way you get that is to be connected to a bunch of people who have enormous networks. Even
Right.
though you're never going to talk to them, you're never going to reach out to them, you're never going to market to them. You only need them for the size of their networks.
Wow. Interesting.
Yeah. So then we'll talk about the search phrase, I think. Where's that coming? That's coming up. So let me just talk about the search phrase really quickly. If you can't type in to like Facebook or Google or LinkedIn, wherever it is you're going to be doing your prospecting, I do mine on LinkedIn. If you can't type in a search phrase that would find these people, you're not going to find those people. I mean, it
Mm,
sounds stupid and obvious, but that's exactly how it works, right? So
mhm,
I ask people, so like, who's your prospect? And they'll say, like, I want people who are. I think we have this on a slide coming up. I'm looking for marketing departments that are frustrated with their current agency. Like, I don't know how you search for someone who's frustrated with their current agency on LinkedIn. I don't know how to make that search phrase.
they have bad recommendations. You have to
Yeah.
search for the
So we'll
reviews.
get into it in a little bit down the road, but
Yeah.
like, you need to be able to type it in to LinkedIn as a search phrase or whatever platform you're going to use, or you're not going to find anybody. So you need to rework your persona, or who you're targeting, until you can be able to actually run a search and find them on LinkedIn. All right, let's talk about the gift, because we talked about housekeeping and we
Mhm.
talked about the invitation. So let's talk about like the gift. And like I said, the gift is like somewhat optional, but it's not as important as the invitation to an event. But and we'll talk about why the event is so important. But what I recommend is you have a PDF booklet. And the booklet, by the way, is not very long. You can see on the bottom of this slide. It's really roughly the length of 2 blog posts. That's it. I mean, you're not going to get a lot of people's time anyway. A lot of people aren't going to read the first page. A lot of people are only going to read the like title page of the booklet, which is just a PDF file. It's nothing special. They're just going to look at that, and then they just have it in their head. Okay, this is a person who solves that kind of problem. They put you in the little box in their head, and that's as far as they go. But that's really all you're looking for at this point. And so what I do for myself, we'll see some in a second, what I've done for clients. I'm not going to show any of the client ones because obviously they're kind of ghostwritten, right? They're called the author on that title, and at the end of the booklet, it's like about the author is like them. It says you never know that Dean Way wrote it for him. But um, we write the booklet, and it looks like a nice little booklet, and this is like pictures or diagrams and stuff in there, and it runs for approximately 11 to 13 pages, but it's really only about 1,200 words.
Mm.
And someone could read the entire thing in 5 or 6 minutes.
What makes it
The
easy to
point of
scan? Yeah. Most
What'd you
people
say?
are scanners and skimmers anyway.
They're just going to scan it anyway. Now, the
Yeah.
booklet is very similar. You remember we talked about, tell people their story with you in it, right? We talk about
Mhm.
their problem. The booklet is here's the entire theme of the booklet for whatever your domain is, okay? Whatever your professional domain is. Here's how an expert approaches or tackles or mitigates or solves, let's say solve. Here's how an expert solves this problem. So I have a bad problem with receivables and collecting on what people owe me. I have a bad problem in that I've got way too many SKUs. I'm all bloated. I have way too many products that my company's making than we can manage. I'm having a problem with growth. I'm having a problem with hiring. That kind of stuff. The whole
Mhm.
booklet is the theme of the booklet is here's how an expert approaches this problem. So again, you're talking to them about them.
Right.
It's not an infomercial for you. I'm just like the live event. It's not an infomercial for you.
Right.
You get a little bit at the end where you talk about yourself, like a
Mhm.
paragraph or two. That's it.
Mhm.
That's all I let clients put in.
Mhm.
Everything else is like about the reader and a problem someone like the reader would have, and how an
Right.
expert sort of at a grand level, or sometimes at a micro level, but how they think about that problem space.
Right.
And you read it and say, oh, so that's how they tackle that. That's interesting. And then you get to the end and say, oh, here's a person who tackles this kind of problem. That's all it's going to do. A lot of this stuff is rope bridges, right? You imagine a bridge made out of rope, it's not going to carry a lot of weight.
No.
So you only bring across the minimum that gets you to the other side that you have to have. And the rest of it you deal with later.
Yeah.
Baby steps, okay?
Yeah.
You can have a landing page or you can have a blog post. But honestly, to me, nothing beats the booklet, partly because you can have a nice thumbnail in there and it'll show up in LinkedIn Messenger. And it's like very clickable. If you say someone, hey, I wrote a blog post, it's like, I don't want to read some jackass's blog post. It might even suck. They might not even be a good reader. Whereas
Mhm.
very few people assume that if a booklet exists, that the writing is crap.
Right.
So they're more likely to click on it and read it. That's the only reason we do it that way.
Oh, and you have the
Again,
opportunity to occupy some space on their hard drive.
yeah, that's it. So, I mean, here's some examples of ones that I've sent out this year alone, and they've all done very, very well for me. Actually, there haven't been any that haven't done very well, but if there were, I would show them and say, don't do this. I did this and it sucked. But in this case, I've only done 4, but they worked really well. By the way, the one on the left there, the positioning workshop, if you go to waycreative.com, you see in the lower right-hand side of, I think, every slide in this thing is like that. If you go to waycreative.com/event, on the top, it'll say previous events. And this was our September one.
Right.
You click on that and scroll down till you see that booklet. There's a little space underneath for your name. I mean, you're already in my mailing list, so you're not you're not adding yourself to a list you didn't belong to before. I got you already, right? If you're in the live event, I almost certainly got you. So, sorry, but that's how it works, right? I showed you in the diagram. You're here. Like, there's a reason this works, right? But that is unfortunately for you, you'd have to look at me and listen to me for 90 minutes if you want to do the whole thing. But that's the entire 21 question, step-by-step explanation with an accompanying workbook that you can fill out about yourself of how to sort of like zero in and create a differentiating angle for yourself in your business. If I recommend, if you're the impatient type like I am, you try to fill in the booklet as much as you can, and then it's very easy to scrub through the video because it's all done like question 3. There's a big slide with question 3 on it, so it's very easy to scrub through, find out the one question is like, what the hell is he asking me about here, and then just listen to my 3 or 4 minute explanation of what it is, and then go back and fill it in for yourself. There's no way you go through that exercise filling it out and checking in on the video once in a while to find out what I'm talking about. There's no way you complete that exercise and don't walk away with a much better idea of what to say to a prospect that will make you stand out compared to anyone else they're talking to. I guarantee that. Of course, you're not paying me for this, so I can guarantee anything I want. There's no money back, but I promise you, I've done this many, 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 many times, over like a couple hundred times. It's been fabulous.
That's worth more than the price you paid.
There you go. And that's the process. That's the whole thing, right? I'm going to give you some details about lessons learned, but and we haven't talked about the live event yet, but that's it. Right? We invited him to something, and now we're going to do the live event. Okay, so let's talk about the event. Yeah. Like I said, and it says at the very bottom of this slide, again, this is not an infomercial about you. You're a stranger to these people. They don't care about you. I'm sorry, but they don't know you and they don't care about you, right? The whole point of the live event is to show them, basically, if you do the booklet, it's an extension of the booklet. Like, this is how an expert solves this problem, except now you have an opportunity to ask questions or make comments yourself, right? So you have an option of live versus pre-recorded. I recommend you do this live. There is literally nothing that matches the energy of a live presentation. None. So, I mean, once it's done, the recording will exist and you can send it to people who registered, and later down the road, you can send it to people who didn't register, and it becomes like another piece of content for you. Mm-hmm. But do it live if you can. And what I do...
I was going to say, I think that, live is actually easier, even though people believe it's not.
It is. And it's really easy I don't do this for a lot of clients, but I don't do the prospecting assistance for a lot of clients, but the ones that I do it for, the ones who ask for it, I'm there to do the whole thing, right? Like, we use my Restream account. We connect to all of their channels. I help them set up and get LinkedIn Live. I help them get and set up YouTube Live. I'm there to host the whole thing. I'm there for tech support. I help them create their slides. I rehearse with them. So before they do the live event, they pretend that we're live, but they're only talking to me. All right. And I'm pointing us up. I spent a lot of time working with a lot of speakers and a lot of corporate execs. I ghostwrite a lot of webinars. I did dozens this year alone for corporate clients. So, I know how to make these things a little tiny bit interesting. I'll give myself like a modicum of, pat on the back for that. Right. So that kind of stuff. So I recommend you do it live. Now, here's for the next, where it says LinkedIn Live, YouTube, and 150 followers. Here's a little trick that you're not going to find around very bunny face. First of all, anybody who sets up a channel on YouTube can stream on YouTube. You basically you set it up, you make the request, 24 hours later, you go back in, they've already set up the basic part of it, and then you just have to provide them with some sort of verification that you're a human being and not a bot. And within another day, go for it. You're streaming live on YouTube like I am right now. LinkedIn Live's a little different. I recommend that everyone shortcut. So because you're a fractional executive, I mean, anyone can have a company page. Anyone can make a company page on LinkedIn. It's basically just an extension of your personal account on LinkedIn, free or paid. Doesn't matter. You
Right.
can have it. So here's how this works. If you apply for a LinkedIn Live privilege or license or whatever you want to call it, like I have on my personal account, my personal profile on LinkedIn, I had to wait a year. I don't know how long it takes now, but I had to wait a year to get permission to stream live on LinkedIn. And then, only then, did I find out there's an absolutely super easy shortcut to that. You create a company page for your business, right? You're a fractional executive. You have a business. You create a company page. It's just an extension, just like a company page on your Facebook account is just an extension of your personal account. You don't need a new login or anything, nothing like that. It's dead simple. You create a company page. And then you start posting and sending emails. You ask around, and you only need 150 people to follow that page. LinkedIn will even give you hundreds of invitations to send to people. And you've probably gotten these before, like, please follow our page, and you log in, it's on your notifications page or whatever, right? Your networking page. As soon as you get 150 followers, the company page, which is like, if we were on LinkedIn today, I would be going through my company page. The company page can stream instantly. Like, there's no permission, there's no application, there's nothing to do. It's automatically granted. So the absolute fastest way, the fastest I've ever seen this happen is a day. It took me 2.5 days, but it doesn't take long to get 155. I mean, it doesn't cost anyone anything to do it. They literally just click a button that says follow, and that's it. That's the end of the journey for them. Yeah. And as soon as you get 150, you can start creating events in LinkedIn, and one of the drop-down options will be LinkedIn Live, and you can stream directly to LinkedIn.
So cool.
So get your 150 followers on a company page. You could be streaming on LinkedIn. And if you set up YouTube and LinkedIn at the same time, where you tried to get 150 followers on a LinkedIn company page, and you set up streaming on YouTube, you'd probably finish at exactly the same time for both of them. It's just a lot easier on YouTube, but it's not hard on LinkedIn either. You can get 150 followers, I swear. Slides versus direct to camera. I like doing both. If you don't want to be on camera, I don't think anyone's going to care. I mean, it'd be nice if you had your picture on some of your slides so people could see you and know what you look like. But I mean, I don't have a problem with that. I do like keeping everything to 30 to 60 minutes. If you're talking about normally mine are only about 30 to 40 minutes, and I try to keep them as short as I can. And with clients, I like to keep everybody at 30 minutes. But in this case, for today, since it's like a multi-step process, I need a little bit longer than 30 minutes. But yeah, it's not a 2-hour marathon event, right? And again, I know I keep hammering on this, and I'm going to hammer on it more, but you're not talking about you. You're talking about how an expert tackles their problem.
Right.
That's it. Now, I will say this. Okay, Dean, now I need to pick an actual topic, right? I need to pick which problem, or I need to pick what I'm going to say. Every problem that any one of your clients is ever facing is in one of 3 stages, right? And you can talk about it as being in one of 3 stages. In fact, you can probably ignore the other 2. Either they're right in the middle of it, they're dealing with a problem, they're trying to fix it, or basically that's mitigation, right? They're trying to deal with a problem. And your topic can be about how to deal with that problem right now today. Very less common is how to get through what we call the suffering phase. Like, now you're losing money. Like, basically, if you were someone who dealt with helping companies pivot versus helping companies turn around, a turnaround is in the mitigation stage, or even in the prevention stage, and a pivot is in the prevention stage, rather, and a turnaround is in the mitigation/suffering stage. Like, they're already in it. It's going to hurt to do this.
You got to plug
but
the
you're
leaks
there, right? So you can either help them figure out how to deal with this problem. Now, you'll see a lot more, by the way, of the suffering stuff over the next couple of years, as it does seem like we might be entering some sort of recession globally.
Yeah.
So it'll be how to deal with the suffering, how to get through it, how to lay off people, how to pare back, how to focus, how to figure out what's most profitable in your company you should be focusing on and selling, and that kind of stuff, right? That's suffering phase. Dealing with, what's going to happen, and that's sort of mitigation. And then prevention is basically how to get upstream of the problem. Usually what you're saying is this problem exists or will exist for you because this other thing wasn't dealt with, but you should go deal with that thing. It's like an 80-20 rule, right? You can fix and pay for fixing the 20%, and it will eliminate the 80% of the problem down the road.
Right. Yeah. Give them a
So
fire extinguisher.
just look at one of these things. You're either upstream, you're in it, or it's already happened and you had to figure out, help people how to cope with it. But just pick something in there. Easy. All right. And now a couple of tips about the event. I use restream.io, and that's their website. StreamYard's also very good. You're probably going to want to stream on LinkedIn, right? Unless you're talking about LinkedIn and you're in a Fight Club situation like I am right now, or I'm not allowed to talk about them while I'm on it. But for all of the 100+ that we've done so far this year, they've all been on LinkedIn Live and YouTube at the same time. What happens with these services is you can stream to multiple places at the same time. And if you have any guests, they can stream to all of their channels on the same platforms at the same time as well. But actually, the reason I use Restream, I don't know if StreamYard does this now, but at the time, they didn't let guests stream to their own channels.
Right.
So the guest was helping you on your channel, but you weren't helping them on theirs. Yeah. And so now I like, we do some of these things. There's like 15, 20 different streams going out. We only have to look at one camera, talk in one microphone, but everything's going everywhere, right?
Well, it's a great feature. I mean, but I've even broadcast to Twitch of all places.
Yeah, so. Yeah, right. Twitter, all of it. I will say this. Whereas you could do this with a phone or something, or other kind of things on YouTube and Facebook and stuff. Restream, or rather, LinkedIn provides no mechanism for you to stream directly through a webcam. If you're going to use slides, or if you're going to do anything other than hold up a phone and talk into it while you walk around or something, which is not easy to do for 30 or 45 minutes or solving a problem. But if you want to actually use slides or anything else, or have guests or whatever, you have to use a service like Restream or StreamYard. And LinkedIn will tell you this, like they have no mechanism for you to show slides without using a service like this. And these services are going to cost, I think Restream has a free tier as long as you don't, care about their logo being on screen. But otherwise, I think it's like, again, similar to these other systems, which I'm officially not recommending you use that automate LinkedIn. But again, you're probably looking at like $50 a month.
Yeah. And that's for something that will allow you to download.
Yeah, and that's unlimited streaming. Like you can go on live every single day. You can do another live stream every minute of the day if you want. Like they don't care. Yeah. I use Zapier.com for so that I'll give you an example. If you registered, however you registered for this event, if you registered, only people who register get like the incentives, right? They get the workbook, they get my slides, they get PDFs, right? It's one of the things I do to encourage people to register. Also, I recommend that you always have something to give away for, you are the expert. Here's how an expert solves this problem when you're doing your own sessions. I recommend you have something to give away, because a lot of people on LinkedIn will say, like, I really think this is an interesting topic. I'd love to go to this, but I'm not available at that time slot. Right? Will there be a replay? And my reply, if you've ever done this with me before, my reply is always this. There will be a replay, but you should register for this session anyway, even if you can't attend, because the people who register get all of the extra stuff we don't have to do anything. It just shows up. And so a lot of people will register just to get your stuff and to watch it in a replay. And then you've got them in your mailing list, because you want to get them off of LinkedIn as quick as possible, right? You don't want LinkedIn to be the only way you can communicate with them. So you need them into your mailing. You use MailChimp. MailChimp has like a free tier for the first 1,000 people you put in. I mean, that's fine for most people. I use ActiveCampaign because I like to mess around with the automations. And like, for instance, what time is it? So about 45 minutes ago, someone, you all should have received the slides for this. It should be in your inbox right now, or your spam folder or whatever. I have no control.
Don't leave.
Right. But I mean, it's there. It's just sent automatically. I use things like ActiveCampaign to help that. And I use Zapier. Zapier is just a service that lets you connect other services together. So it's the only service you can use that will connect a LinkedIn event. Like, you create an event on LinkedIn. Some of the people here are registered on LinkedIn to do it. They registered there, and then Zapier sort of like vacuums that off and puts it into my mailing system, so that then I can communicate with people outside of the event about the event, right? Understand, people register for my events. I don't sell them anything through that. That's not for marketing purposes, but I do need to communicate with them several times before the event or during the event. And so, it's good to have them in a mailing system for that. All right. And like I said, some percentage of the people who watch are going to want to get on your calendar and talk to you about something. And I use Calendly for that. The only reason I use Calendly is because it's the 800-pound gorilla in that market. There are other calendar services, but one nice thing about Calendly is there's a higher than average likelihood that the person who's setting it up also has at least a free Calendly account. And so instead of saying, you're trying to avoid calendar Tetris, right? Or like you're trying to like fit all these blocks to see what's going to work together on someone's weekly schedule. If they have a Calendly account and you have a Calendly account, and since it's the most popular service, it'll only show the availability where both of you are available, instead of them having to like look at the web page and then go over and look at their calendar and go back. No, that's not going to work for me. How about that? Right? It'll only show them the stuff that works for them. They click it and it's done. Piece of cake. By the way, anyone who signs up on Calendly, like gets some stuff on my calendar through Calendly, also automatically goes into my mailing list, so I can communicate with them later. And then I like to just do 15-minute sessions. I find 15 minutes is more than long enough, but then I have a buffer built in on Calendly. That's very easy to do. It'll like do it by default if you like click the little box, just so that if the conversation goes over, no one else is already in that slot. It's easy to do. And then, you wouldn't know it by how much talking I'm doing on this presentation, but like shut up and listen and let people tell you what they're interested in talking about and answer their questions. It's not a sales pitch, actually. It's just you listening to see if they're a fit for you.
Right.
And then be ready to discuss your pricing or have an easy entry option. Like I'll give you an example. On the copywriting side of my business, I sell my time in blocks of hours. Some people sell it by project, but I sell it in blocks of hours. I was a project manager for a really long time. I'm still like certified project manager. If you tell me what it is, I know how fast I am and I know roughly how long it's going to take me. And I'll say like, this would take X amount, but I have an easy entry option for every client where they start with just booking 5 hours, paying for 5 hours of my time. Right. It's just a few $100s, right? And that way, like they can try me out and I can try them out and no one's like tied into a big thing. And it also greatly shortens my sales cycle. Mm-hmm. So I recommend you have some sort of easy onboarding option for making someone a paid client, even if it's at a low dollar value. And again, I think we are actually done. Am I out of slides now? Yeah, I have a few more. You can like skip if you want, but I'm just going to go through these really fast, really, really fast. One is, and we talked about the positioning thing, go do that workshop. Figure out every minute you spend figuring out how you can come off as different from everyone else is absolutely worth it. There's a URL again. Just go ahead and do that. Since you already have the PDF, I don't have to like spend time on this. I'm going to skip the horse lady this time. A lot of people, I've done this once or twice before. A lot of people, know who Stephen Covey is. And he had this sort of thing where he's got a bucket of sand and he's got ththese rocks that have spirituality or family or career or education labels on them. And the whole point is, if you, you want to make sure that you give priority to the big rocks. But what he shows is that if the sand is everything else in life that's not really important, all the distractions and all this kind of stuff, mm-hmm. or people like you prospecting to them and that kind of stuff, right? If you pour all the sand in first, you can get the rocks in, but it's really hard and it's like you spill over and it's kind of a mess. If you put the rocks in first, then the sand just flows around the rocks that are in there and everything fits. Now, that's a great like prioritization and productivity lesson. It's not what I'm actually here to tell you. Mm-hmm. What I'm telling you is, in other people's life, you're the sand. You're not one of their rocks. Understand that, like you say, oh, I don't want to interrupt people, and neither do I. And that's why everything is done really low key, right? And it's like, hey, it seems like we have similar connections. Like that's it. That's the whole pitch, to connect with me. It's not like if you connect with me, I'm going to be inviting you to this and this, and I'm going to give you all this. No, it's none of that. It's like you're sand in their life, and for most of them, they're not ready for that particular piece of sand. So don't take it personally if once in a while someone says, hey, like, you shouldn't have sent this to me, or you didn't look at my profile hard enough to know that I'm not interested in this. Or they just say like, no thanks, right? So you're the sand in their life and they're the sand in other people's lives that they're trying to connect with. So just don't worry about it. It won't happen very often, but once in a while someone might say like, go away. So just go away. Mm-hmm. Don't worry about it. Again, talk about them. We all start with, what do I want to say? And then they might come to a copywriter and say, so like, here's what I want to say. What's the best way to say it? And if for a wide audience copywriter, someone like me, whose job it is to understand audience attention and get a stranger who's never heard of you to give you a few seconds of their time so that then I can hook them and have them spend a few more minutes of their time. And then they get to the end and say like, wow, that was interesting. I didn't even intend to read that whole thing, right? That's my job. I start with, why is this worth them paying attention to? And then how can I make sure it's memorable? And then I worry about how you should be saying it. We did the whole assertive, selling from your heels, aggressive kind of stuff. Like, how do you say? And then whatever part of here's what I want to say that fits in with that process, that's all that I give them, and it's all aspirational. Right? If you start with, if you start on the left-hand side of this, what do I want to say? And how you think you're one of the rocks. You should be thinking, I'm one of the pieces of sand. Start at the right end and work backwards. That's all I'm saying. Okay. Very simply, we talked about finding people. You should be able to answer all of these three questions. Like, can you find them? Can you put together a search term where you can find them? And then can you cost effectively reach them? Like, if you know, I've had people come to me and say I want to only deal with, ultra rich people. And I say, okay, how can you afford to only target ultra rich people? Like, how would you cost effectively get to them? If you have to join a country club at 40 grand a year in South Florida to do it, okay, I mean, if you think it's worth it, but and then finally, do people like that pay people like you? Because if they don't pay people like you, or they've never paid people like you, maybe you should go after a closer dollar.
Right.
Again, like for me, fractional CMO, pretty good search term, right? Someone frustrated with their current ad agency, not so good. Like, I don't know how you find people like that.
Yeah.
So I'm not saying you have to pick someone's title, but you have to come up with some kind of search term that if you experiment with it on LinkedIn and you look at the people that LinkedIn spits up for you, they should be the kind of people you want to get to. And also, we talked about this for recruiters, but it's also why I target fractional CMOs. I work really well with them because not only in the case of the recruiters, you can think of the recruiters being the red dot, right? They're connected to a lot of people, and some of the people they're connected to are also connected to a lot of people. I work a lot with fractional CMOs because not only do I, help them get clients, like their website and this other stuff, and maybe some of them, pay me to implement this process for them, but then they're getting new clients all the time, and all of those clients are going to need a copywriter. And now that fractional CMO knows that there's someone that they trust, that they've worked with, and and is worth the money. And so I get repeat business from fractional CMOs whereas I wouldn't necessarily get the same kind of, bring me in on the project you're working on if it's a CFO.
Right.
So we call those switchboard prospects. Right. And there's probably a switchboard prospect somewhere in your domain that you haven't thought of. Like, very common ones are accountants, or CPAs and tax people, lawyers, right? There are people whose business it is to be connected to lots of other businesses. And so a lot of people choose their accountant. A lot of business people choose their accountant because of connections and introductions they can get from their other clients. And so it might be worth your while to literally target accountants and say, like, I do turnarounds for companies who are, their growth has slowed down. They think they're not going to make it to the next level. And so, if you ever come across, or if any of your clients might be interested in hearing how someone like me tackles that problem, here's an invitation to an event. That's a switchboard prospect. That person goes out to there and say, as a service to you and to show that I'm keeping an eye out for you, here's an event that's going to happen that you might be interested in. He's talking about when your growth flattens out and you think like your product line's a bit bloated. Biscay, switchboard prospect.
Yeah.
All right. We don't care about this. Talk about them. And then one last thing, like, everyone wants every prospecting process or every other process, they want it to be very prescriptive, like copy paste this text into here and do this, right? And formulas are fine. Formulas are great. Formulas are fantastic. Templates, structures, they help make sure you don't forget anything. But being formulaic, that is death. Like when I said, if you use one of those automated services to do your outreach, don't accept the text that they have. It's too formulaic. Everyone's seeing it. They immediately turn off and they're gone, right? Don't be formulaic. Don't look and sound like everyone else. Again, go back to the positioning thing and figure out how to do your own positioning. You can't look and be like everyone else, or you will literally not be remembered 5 seconds after they stop reading. All right. And then I think that's it. You got the PDF. So these are the tools we use. Blah, 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 blah. And that's it. If you go to waycreative.com and you scroll down a tiny little bit, this is what my webpage looks like. You can see how I do copywriting, or if you want to click a blue button, you can actually see more details around the process that I'm using. Basically, I clone my process and I help other people by adapting it to them.
We got a couple of questions. I don't know if you
Yes,
want to
sir.
answer. Okay, go. So, from our audience who have patiently been waiting
So
to
patient. Thank you so
so
much.
patient. Here's one from Jim. He's referring to the your strategy
Mhm.
for stuffing your first and last name in the first section under first name.
Right.
He says, what about the additional name section below the last name section on LinkedIn? What's your strategy or suggestion for that particular field?
Depending on whether they're on a desktop or a mobile device, they may or
Mhm.
may not get it might be truncated if you're using the
Ah,
additional name
yeah.
as well.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Right. I mean, if you think about the structure that I put in for that, it is, here's my name and here's me talking about you.
Yeah.
Right. That's what you're now using the last name text box for. You're
That's a
showing
great
affinity or adjacency or curiosity, at least. Right.
right.
And anything beyond that, in the Messenger, LinkedIn Messenger part, I mean, it'll show fine on the profile page, but on the LinkedIn Messenger part, where you're doing a lot of your outbound, right? A lot of your outbound is done in LinkedIn Messenger. It'll oftentimes truncate it, and so why bother?
Yeah. That's
And some
true.
people say, "Oh, it's truncated. People will click through to see it." No, they'll just ignore
No.
you.
And they will ignore you with the
You're not a
dots.
rock. You're sand. Like,
You're
stop
saying.
acting like you're a rock. You'll be
Yeah,
much better
exactly.
off if you realize you're sand.
So here's another one. Yeah, oh, he's acknowledging the desktop mobile thing. Yeah, he says it aligns great on mobile. But
Yeah,
so another one he said is asking. This is the same. This is a follow up question from
sure.
Jim, which is how do I prevent the word fractional from appearing on the top line with my full name? I don't know if you. I mean, I would imagine you'd want to have
What's wrong with
fractional.
saying fractional?
Yeah, there's nothing wrong with
That's
that.
kind of what you are,
Yeah,
right? People who are interested in hiring like a fractional executive don't
yeah,
want you to bury the fact that you're a fractional executive. Like that's
yeah.
how
No
they're making
kidding.
their decision.
It's a benefit. It's a
Yeah.
benefit to them. There's another question for the audience. Says, "Oh, about your mentioning Calendly.
Yes.
So, do you use the free version or do you use the free?"
I have clients who use the free version and it works well. Here's the only difference between using for 99% of users. The only difference between a free version and a paid version of Calendly is how many calendars it will connect to. The free
Right.
version connects to one calendar. Now, if you're
Mhm.
the kind of person who uses one calendar for their work and their business and their personal and everything else, you have a single calendar and Outlook or Office 365 or Google or whatever, right? Then you only need the free version. But
Yeah.
if you have
I mean,
multiple calendars like I do, and like you separate stuff,
yeah,
then I use a paid version. Even the paid version is only like I think I pay $12 or $15 a month,
yeah.
and you
It's
can do
it's
a lot with Calendly, right? I mean, it'll integrate and put people into Mailchimp for you. You can if you have the kind of appointment where you're selling like a consulting hour kind of
mhm,
thing. Calendly, it will handle all the payments for you. Like people can pay with a
right.
credit card using Calendly. There's a lot there with the paid version.
Yeah. Oh, I see. The one person is he's talking about that the notion is that things align great in mobile, but for the whole fractional thing that he was mentioning earlier was appearing desktop versus mobile. My advice to people is think mobile first
Yeah,
because 80% plus they're all on mobile.
you have to
So
assume mobile.
optimize for mobile, and then secondarily think
Yep.
desktop.
That also
Yeah.
means the banner on your LinkedIn profile page, like the sort of big wide picture behind your little circle
Hmm.
of your head, that
Hmm.
if you've got words or anything that's important in that picture, it needs to be like in the middle
Yeah.
2/3. Like
Exactly. Yeah.
imagine that the left-hand corner and the right-hand corner are have been cut off. Everything you need needs to be in the middle part.
Yeah.
Because
It's
on
like when we
mobile, that's all they're going to see.
Yeah, it's like when we train people for short form video, we always say if you're going to repurpose your horizontal videos into 9 by 16, always think of centering yourself and moving slightly away.
Yeah.
So it's a uh, similar type of idea. But yeah, think mobile.
All
So,
right.
oh, we got several
This
thank you.
went
We're
this
good.
ended up being longer than I expected. So
Yeah, but
sorry,
they're just
folks.
it's regarded as very valuable by those who are attending live. So there's nothing to worry about.
There you go.
Yeah.
Now go make some money.
Yeah.
All right. Thanks again, Dr. V. You're the consummate assistant slash chat curator.
It's my pleasure to be not quite the MC, but in a similar capacity. So.
Yeah. We'll do this for you next month.
Thank you.
All right. Thanks,
Okay.
everyone. Bye, folks.